Krishna Prasthaya Mati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Deva Gauravani Vicharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskadyade Siddhana. Today I'm going to go over Nectar of Devotion, verse number 5, as well as something about verse number 4, in relationship to especially regular association with devotees and why it's necessary for our spiritual advancement. So let me begin by reciting verse number 4. And explaining a little bit about it. Dadati pratigrinati guyamakiti prichati bhunte bojayate chaiva shadvidam priti lakshanam. Offering gifts in charity, accepting charitable gifts, revealing one's mind and confidence, inquiring confidentially, accepting prasad, and offering prasad are the 6 symptoms of love shared by one devotee and another. So in Srila Prabhupada's purport, he mentions that our spiritual advancement depends upon our association with devotees. Most of us, if not all of us, we cannot directly perceive Krishna. Only very advanced devotees, such as the Brahmana and the Shakshi Gopal stories, where the Brahmin was on pilgrimage with the elder Brahmin, and the elder Brahmin promised the younger Brahmin his daughter in charity in marriage. But the younger Brahmin was a little doubtful because in terms of Vedic culture, he was uneducated. Obviously, he was not uneducated, but education means to be a Vedic scholar for a Brahmin. And he had no wealth. And yet this Brahmin, the elderly Brahmin who was offering him his daughter, was a wealthy man, had a wealthy family, and was learned in the Vedic literature. Since they were in Vrindavan, the younger Brahmin told the older Brahmin that if you insist in having your daughter marry me, then please let us go before the Gopal deity, and you can testify that you're making this promise. So if in the future anything goes wrong, then Shakshi Gopal can come and act as Gopal, the Gopal deity, can come and act as a witness. So they went before the deity, and both of them, the elderly Brahmin, promised that he was going to offer in charity his daughter to this younger Brahmin who was helping him on the pilgrimage. And the younger Brahmin told Gopal deity that in the future, anything goes wrong, then I'll come and require that you come as a witness. So the Gopal deity smiled, and everything seemed to be all right, until they got back to where they came from, their hometown. And after some time, it was noticed that the elder Brahmin was not fulfilling his promise of giving in marriage his daughter to this Brahmana. So one day, the elder Brahmin called his family together and said to them that on pilgrimage there was this nice Brahmin who was assisting me, and I promised him in charity my daughter in marriage. The Brahmin's family was not very happy about that. His wife said that if you do that, I'm going to take poison and die. His sons said that they couldn't permit this to happen, etc. In other words, it wasn't a great festival. They were not very joyful about the idea that the elderly Brahmin was going to give his daughter in charity to a poor Brahmin. In any case, after some time, the Brahmin came to the house and asked the elderly Brahmin, "What's going on? You promised me your daughter in charity. You have not said anything." So the elder Brahmin's son came out with a stick and chased the younger Brahmin away. So the younger Brahmin went to the town and told the townspeople that this elderly Brahmin promised me his daughter in charity. He's not fulfilling it. So they came there, and the elderly Brahmin, because the elder Brahmin's son told him, "If they come back, don't worry, I'll take care of it." So the townspeople came with the younger Brahmin, asking the elderly Brahmin, "What's going on? Why have you not fulfilled your promise?" So the elderly Brahmin said, "I can't remember the promise." And the younger Brahmin, the elderly Brahmin's son came and said, "Actually, this younger Brahmin is a rogue. On pilgrimage, he gave my father some poison, made him crazy, stole his money. Now he's come back claiming that the elderly Brahmin had offered his daughter in charity, but this was a lie." So the younger Brahmin said, "But my father and myself, we went before the Gopal deity in Vrindavan, and he promised before the deity that he'd offer his daughter in charity." So the elderly Brahmin's son said, "Yes, anyhow, if Gopal comes here and testifies, then we'll accept it." And the elderly Brahmin said, yes, of course we'll accept it. And the younger Brahmin said, "Yes, I'll go and call the Gopal deity. He'll come and testify." And all the townspeople were all in agreement. If the Gopal deity comes and testifies, then of course we'll accept it, whatever he says. So the younger Brahmin went back to Vrindavan, went before the Gopal deity, and said to the Gopal deity, "The elderly Brahmin, he's pious, but somehow or another, he doesn't want to disturb his family. So therefore, I'm requesting you come and act as a witness." So the Gopal deity said, "Well, I'll appear there in my four-arm form and act as a witness." But the younger Brahmin said, "No, you promised you'd come personally. You have to come." But the Gopal deity said, "Well, I'm a deity. Deities don't walk, generally speaking." But the younger Brahmin said, "But if you can talk, you can walk." So Gopal thought about it and said, "That's a very good argument. I guess I have to come. Just walk in front of me, don't look back, and every day offer me a kilo of rice." So Gopal and this younger Brahmin walked to Vidyanagara, and there Gopal acted as a witness. Now, most of us probably can't go before our deities and make a promise and tell our deity, "My dear deity, you're the witness. If something goes wrong, you have to come and testify." We might be a little disappointed if the deity doesn't respond to us and doesn't walk with us over to the courthouse to testify. This is for only very advanced devotees. Generally speaking, our association with Krishna, to a large extent, comes through association with Krishna's devotees. Therefore, Lord Kapila Dev told his mother, devahuti, satam prasangam mama virya samvido, bhavanti rikarna rasayanam kata, tajjo shivarashva vargavartani, chararatira bhaktir nukramishati. That satam, in the association of those who are interested in Krishna consciousness, the devotees, satam, sat of course means eternality, and the complete eternality is Krishna consciousness. So satam prasangam, in the association of such devotees, mama virya samvido, who are hearing about my glories, then the process of devotional service actually begins. The purification of our intelligence, what Krishna mentions, satam prasangam mama virya samvido, bhavanti rit karna. So karna means our hearing. Of course, our ears. Karna means ears. So we hear through our ears, either we hear nonsense or we hear about Krishna consciousness. Krishna is very strict. So he says anything we're hearing that's not directly related to him or helpful so we can learn how to hear about him is considered to be gramya kata. So it's in the association of devotees when we hear about Krishna's glories, and if we allow those glories to enter through our karna, our ear, and go into our heart, and allow Krishna to enter into our heart, then it becomes like a rasayana. It awakens the sleeping soul or the dead soul. This is called Krishna consciousness. So Krishna consciousness is not just an intellectual exercise. It begins with intellect, hearing, but we have that hearing is to give us instructions how to allow Krishna to enter into our heart and enlighten us, and not only enlighten us, but also Krishna says to reveal himself to us so we can experience his presence. Tesham eva nukam bharata. In other words, to develop the proper mood so that Krishna becomes compassionate upon us. Generally speaking, we know that Krishna is compassionate upon us when we develop a certain amount of humility. Because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was complaining, or at least lamenting, that he was also chanting his rounds every day, but he wasn't in ecstasy. He couldn't, so he was inquiring about why I'm chanting Hare Krishna, but I'm not Krishna conscious. I'm not conscious of the holy name. I'm chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. But still, I'm generally not very conscious of Krishna's presence, what to speak of the fact that Krishna and his name are not different. So what's the problem? So the first problem Chaitanya Mahaprabhu reveals is Trinada Pi Sunichena, that Krishna will not reveal himself if we're proud. Because in the spiritual world, no one is materially proud. Material pride is only for those who want to live in the material world. And what do we have to be proud of? Our present material body, our minds, our intellects, our possessions. So these are not very good qualifications for Krishna revealing himself. And for most conditioned souls, it's very bitter to hear that we're not this body. And what to speak, we're not this body. We're not even the possessor of the things that are related to the body. And not only that, we're not even the doer of our activities. That we get absolutely no credit for whatever we're doing in the material world. other than the fact that we're proud. Of course, ultimately the soul can only desire, and Krishna, through his energies, either spiritual or material, makes arrangements in this world. So ultimately we're not the direct doer, but we're the desirer. But if we're desiring to be separate from Krishna by imagining that we're something other than a very tiny servant of Krishna, then we're put into a situation where we become proud. That everyone in the material world is proud. Even if I become an ant, I'll be proud of how strong I am. Or I'm the queen ant. I'm not just an ordinary ant. I have millions of followers. And they're all very strong. So this pride is a great impediment for our spiritual advancement. And therefore, to allow this knowledge to enter into our ear, first of all, we have to understand that we have a problem of pride. And because we're identifying with this body and we're proud of it, or we're identifying with things in relation to this body, and because we're proud, therefore we don't allow the knowledge that we're actually 1/10,000th the size of tip of hair in size to enter very deeply into our heart. What to speak of conceiving that Krishna is in every atom, etc., etc. This is not only not realized by practical experience, it's not taken very seriously. So, in the association of devotees, Satam Prasanga Mama Virya Samvido Bhavanti Rit Karana Rasayanam Kata. If we can allow some of this message to enter into our heart by properly associating with the devotees, because it's in the association of devotees that we have the opportunity to practice devotional service. It is something like, the material world is something like a dollhouse for a child. A little child, 5 years old, is given a dollhouse. Because that way the child does not break the things in the house, although she may break the things in the dollhouse. She's given a little kitchen with plastic pots and plastic chapatis to cook. Therefore, it's very hard for her to burn the chapatis because there's no fire. But she's thinking, she's cooking, she's preparing prasadam, plastic prasadam, and she's offering it to her plastic deities, and very proud of how nicely she's doing. But it's not the actual house, it's not the actual kitchen, it's not actual prasadam, but she's practicing. And later on, when she grows up, she may be inspired to work to serve Krishna in an actual kitchen. Similarly, the material world is like a plastic toy house for us to play around with. Because here, if you break something, it's ultimately only temporary. Spiritual world, it's not possible to actually break anything. But here, if we want to break something, we get the opportunity to fulfill our whims or our desires. So we have to understand that to enter into the real world, we have to use this world in the proper way. Safe zone, because if we do something wrong here, we get a chance to make it up. The spiritual world, if we went before Radha and Krishna with a plate of prasadam and we dropped it on them, it would be not very nice. It would not be considered a very devotional activity. Here, if we drop something, it doesn't disturb the spiritual world, at least. And it's only temporary. Here we can practice serving the deities too, but as in the spiritual world, no one serves Krishna directly. Everyone serves Krishna through his devotees. Even Srimati Radharani is surrounded by her devotees, and she relies upon her associates also in her service to Krishna. She even considers sometimes that she's subordinate to her associates, like Lalita Devi Dasi. Lalita in the spiritual world is Srimati Radharani's guru. And Srimati Radharani will not do anything without Lalita's permission. If she wants to, after having a quarrel with Krishna, if Lalita doesn't allow Radha and Krishna to meet with each other, Srimati Radharani, although she would like to make up with Krishna, she's not allowed to until Lalita gives the order that it's all right. And that way, the relationships in the spiritual world remain ever fresh. They're not taken for granted. Therefore, Krishna's associates and their relationship with each other and with Krishna is very important to keep the spiritual atmosphere ever fresh and enlivened. So here also, we have to understand that these loving exchanges for the devotees are not arbitrary, nor that we can elect whether we engage in them or not if we want to make spiritual advancement. They're the very heart of spiritual advancement. Even when we think we're approaching Krishna directly, we can only approach Krishna through the instructions of his devotees. When we hear, as Prabhupada once said, when we read Nectar Devotion, and we hear that Srila Rupa Goswami is asking us to wake up to go to Mangala Arati, if we wake up and we go to Mangala Arati, then we're serving the lotus feet of Srila Rupa Goswami. That the instructions of the devotees, if we serve them, then this is actually the best way of serving Krishna. Gopi Bharata Pada Kamalayor Dasa Dasa Anudasa. So we have to be very conscious of our relationships. And here in this particular verse, 6 relationships are mentioned. Prabhupada explains in the purport that Srila Rupa Goswami, as in the spiritual world, doesn't necessarily give a direct understanding of what he's talking about here. In other words, offering gifts in charity doesn't mean to offer someone just a new computer or something. That I don't have a computer, then therefore, how can I give in charity? So offering gifts in charity, as Prabhupada explains in the verse, in the purport, the best charity is to give the holy name to someone. And not only the holy name, an example of how to chant the holy name. We can't give people something that we don't have. Therefore, our ability to help the devotees, because after all, we're servants. Gopi Bharata Pada Kamalayara Dasa Dasa Anudasa. Since we're aspiring to become servants of the servant of Krishna, if we offer gifts in charity, such as the holy name, we have to show an example of chanting the holy name, so that we can give innocent people who are aspiring to become devotees at our level, the gift of the holy name, etc. Similarly, we have to accept the holy name and the instructions of pure devotional service. Revealing one's mind and confidence means to tell others about our experiences in Krishna consciousness, not tell people gossip the devotees gossip and confidence. Are you sure you're not going to tell anyone this? No, real confidence means confidence of our experience in Krishna consciousness. And becoming receptive, you hear about other devotees experiencing Krishna consciousness. Just like in the Srimad Bhagavatam, we find Vyasadeva, Srila Vyasadeva morose. Srila Vyasadeva is not an ordinary personality. He compiled the 1 to 10 billion verses of the Vedas. He wrote the Mahabharata. He directly heard through his disciple Sanjaya the Bhagavad Gita. Not an ordinary personality, yet he was morose. Probably not as morose as some of us are sometimes. But anyhow, he wasn't ecstatic. His spiritual master Narada Muni came and immediately understood his problem in that he had not properly glorified Krishna or sufficiently glorified Krishna. He was involved in so many different points in the Vedas, and therefore his wasn't completely focused in Krishna consciousness. Therefore he inquired, what can I do? And Narada Muni explained that you should sit and think about Krishna. Simple process. Bhakti yogena manasi, samyak pranihite patmale, apaisha purusham purnam, maya chatada apaishrat. So he followed his spiritual master's instructions, sat down in meditation, and saw Krishna within his heart, and became ecstatic and satisfied, and therefore anartho pasamam sakshat bhakti yoga adhokshaja. Therefore he compiled Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our primary scripture about Krishna, leading us step by step to be able to focus our mind and give our love to Krishna. Similarly, prasad, things in relation to Krishna, accepting and offering. So this is somehow or another helping the devotees advance in Krishna consciousness. Now, what is the action in the next verse? Krishna says, Krishneti yasya giritam manasadriyeta dikshasti tat prani tipi srivajantam isham shushu shaya bhajanam vigam ananya anya indati sunya hridaya usita sangalabhya. One should mentally honor the devotee who chants the holy name of the Lord Krishna. One should offer humble obeisances to the devotee who has undergone spiritual initiation, diksha, and is engaged in worshiping the deity. And one should associate with and faithfully serve that pure devotee who is advanced in undeviated devotional service, whose heart is completely devoid of the propensity to criticize others. So in Srila Prabhupada's purport, he writes, in order to intelligently apply the 6 loving reciprocations mentioned in the previous verse, one must select proper persons with careful discrimination. Srila Rupa Goswami therefore advises that we should meet with the Vaishnavas in an appropriate way according to the particular status. In this verse, he tells us how to deal with 3 types of devotees: Kanista Adhikari, Madhyama Adhikari, and Uttama Adhikari. And then Prabhupada will give us a description of these different devotees. These descriptions in this particular verse are from the point of view of faith or experience. When we talk about faith, Vishvasya Kori, then Shara Shabde, Vishvasikore, Suridanis Chai, Krishna Bhakti Kaili, Sarva Karma Kritika Hai. There are different ways of looking at Kanista, Madhyam, and Uttama. There's Kanista Vai, Eligibility for devotional service, which we'll find, I believe, in the third chapter of the Nectar devotion. And then there's eligibility according, and then there's Kanista, Madhyama, and Uttama according to one's realization of Krishna, or according to faith. This verse deals with faith. Stricter than the explanation that Prabhupada gives in other parts of the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Nectar devotion. In other words, we have to understand what Kanista Adhikari and Madhyama Adhikari means: beginning, middle, and end. So it can be applied in many circumstances. So here, generally speaking, the Kanista Adhikari is rather obvious, one who's trying to chant the holy name. He's received Harinam initiation from the spiritual master and is trying to chant the holy name. Now, the holy name cannot be chanted by one whose senses are not purified. So when we're chanting japa, it is not that we're not chanting japa. It's not that we're not chanting the holy name. We're trying to chant the holy name. And when we actually chant the holy name, because there are three stages of chanting, there's Nama Parad, there's Nama Bas, and Shuddhanam. And then there's Bhavanam, and then there's Premanam. Nama Parad means Shnik Shnik, Ram Ram, Day 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 Day, Hey Kitty Kitty, Hey Kitty Kitty Kitty. Chanting like that. Or chanting with a misconception, not understanding Krishna, that he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and more or less not taking very seriously the chanting. Inattentive chanting is also offensive chanting. Then we have Navabhas, trying to pay attention, not always being in the trying to understand what the mood for chanting is, how to feel properly, how to call out to Krishna, how to call out to Srimati Radharani with attention and respect, and ultimately with some feeling. Now, Shuddhanam is when we chant Hare Krishna, and Krishna is automatically appearing within our heart. When I say appearing within our heart, I mean that within our memory. It is not an ordinary thing when we remember Krishna. That is the path for perfection. As it says, Smarta Vyak Sadatam Vishnur Vismakta Shatuna Kinchit Sarva Vidini Sedyasyur Etiyor Eva Kinkara. That all the rules and regulations in the Vedas are meant for two things. One is to help us always remember Krishna, and second, never to forget him. So if we're remembering Krishna, following the process, the correct process, that means that we're actually associating with Krishna. And at first we may just remember Krishna, but with some practice, we'll use our ability to actually feel Krishna's presence. And that means when we feel Krishna's presence, that's called Krishna consciousness. Of course, remembering Krishna is also Krishna consciousness, but according to the teachings of Ramananda Roy to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Krishna Bhakti, Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavita Mati Kriyatem Topi Labhyate. So Krishna consciousness, what Prabhupada writes as Krishna consciousness, is Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavita Mati. When we're actually feeling rasa, pleasure, transcendental pleasure, love, in association with Krishna. Just remembering Krishna is also Krishna consciousness, but that higher taste that we're looking for, love, affection, devotion, is beginning to experience when we're actually on the platform chanting Shuddha Bhakti, or even Nam Abbas. We get a little glimpse of that. Or Shuddha Nam is when we're actually experiencing Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavatamati, when our consciousness is actually experiencing some pure experience of Krishna consciousness. So the Kanesa Adhikari is trying to chant the holy name. The Madhyam Adhikari has received spiritual initiation, has been fully engaged by him in the transcendent loving service of the Lord. Not an ordinary thing. Not so easy to be, on this sense, a Madhyam Adhikari. It's on the state of Nishtha, wherein there's no more deviation from always serving Krishna, always remembering Krishna and never forgetting him. Of course, that remembrance of Krishna means not seeing only the form of Krishna with a flute and peacock feather in his hair, but also the proper relationships with the devotees. And also the proper relation with the innocent. And the proper relationship with those who are against Krishna. It's relational. Everything depends upon our relationships with others. And devotional service, sadhana bhakti, means to practice relationships. We practice our relation with Krishna by chanting the holy name. We learn about our relations with others by reading Srimad Bhagavatam. We learn also about our relation with Krishna and with others by serving the deity in the temple, by chanting with each other, hearing about Krishna's glories with each other. It's all relationship. Similarly, there's a relationship with serving the devotees appropriately, as mentioned in the previous verse and explained here, the proper discrimination. Now, what does that mean? That we have to develop that discrimination and apply it within our lives. Now, we live in a temple that may be of an advantage to applying these relationships if we understand that's what we're trying to do. Otherwise, we can live in a temple oblivious to trying to establish the correct relationships, and it may take us a few million years before we do it. Similarly, if we live outside the temple, if we have a family, we also have to establish the correct relationships in Krishna consciousness. And with our friends, because spiritual world means association with other people. There's no blade of grass, there's no gopi, there's no cowherd boy, there's no mother Jasoda who lives by themselves. And it's only them and Krishna and no one else. Because if we go to the spiritual world, even our house is a devotee. You can't avoid it. We have a personal relationship with everyone in the spiritual world. And here we're trying to practice that. So therefore, we should understand the importance of finding out those who are superior to us. And the most superior, those who have joined the Hare Krishna movement, ISKCON, we take as in faith that Srila Prabhupada is a pure devotee, a Mahabhagavad. Otherwise, there's no meaning of being part of ISKCON, really. Just like in the beginning of the introduction to the Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada mentions that one lady was asking him about how Srila Prabhupada could recommend a translation of the Bhagavad Gita so that she could read it in English. And Prabhupada said, unfortunately, I can't recommend any translation because those who are translating Bhagavad Gita, the 700 translations that Prabhupada was aware of at that time, none of them actually agreed with Krishna completely. especially the part where Krishna says that he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's a problem for any conditioned soul, because we're here in competition, what to speak with God. We're in competition with every other living entity in the material world. If we see someone richer than we are, more beautiful than we are, more intelligent than we are, there may be a tendency to become a little envious of them. What to speak if we met the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who had unlimited beauty, unlimited strength, unlimited wealth, unlimited knowledge, unlimited fame, unlimited renunciation? How much more envious would we be of him? If we're envious of little tiny souls in this world, how much more envious would we be of the big soul in the spiritual world? Therefore, we have to practice non-enviousness. And how is that done? Well, as I said, at least the Prabhupada said that if we're going to get any benefit from reading Bhagavad Gita, at least theoretically, we have to accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, there are many great saints who have declared Krishna as God, and Krishna has declared in Bhagavad Gita that he's God in many places, the Supreme Person. But still, we may not be able to accept it. Matter of fact, we won't be able to accept it because we don't have the experience. We don't see Krishna except through the deities or in other ways. But direct Swayam Bhagavan Sakshat Hari, the original form of Krishna, with our present eyes we can't see, nor do we experience the unlimited pleasure of rasa on the highest stage of prema. Therefore, at least on faith, we have to accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in that spirit, we can read Bhagavad Gita. We don't blindly accept the Krishna as God, and we don't blindly reject the Krishna as God. We learn the process of realizing, experiencing Krishna through reading Bhagavad Gita. And those who are faithful, Shadavan Lavate Jnanam, those who are faithful, they believe that if I chant Hare Krishna, and if I control my senses and engage them in Krishna service, then gradually I'll become Krishna conscious. That can be experienced by one who chants Hare Krishna and engages in devotional service. Although we don't immediately realize Krishna fully, we realize a little bit about Krishna, and that keeps us on the path towards Krishna. So theoretically, we accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of God, and in the same way, theoretically, we accept that Srila Prabhupada is a pure devotee, that his purports in his books are as good as Krishna's instructions. Prabhupada's example as a devotee who's pure devotee and as a preacher are perfect. We may not understand his perfection of how he was preaching, but we take it at least on faith that what Prabhupada did was perfect. We may not know even what perfect means, but we should take it on faith and then try to understand what that perfection is. For instance, sometimes we'll find that devotees will criticize Prabhupada, even devotees will criticize him. Even so-called learned devotees will criticize him, that he said things which were contrary to social norms. That are not, what do they call that when something is socially not acceptable and you say it anyhow, whatever it is. So Prabhupada may say something about women, he may say something about blacks, he may say something about the moon, he may say so many different things, and devotees become disturbed that how can a pure devotee say such things? Generally speaking, such devotees never assimilate the totality of what Prabhupada's saying. They never examine according to the time or the place or the circumstances of what Prabhupada is saying. The underlying purpose of trying to encourage people to become a devotee of Krishna is not really taken into account. In other words, if Prabhupada was constantly contradicting whatever anyone said that's not socially acceptable, probably most of the people in the movement would never have become devotees. So Prabhupada had to see things from different points of view and present Krishna consciousness to different audiences, and sometimes say things that which were out of context would be seen as socially unacceptable, in order to deliver the message of Krishna consciousness most effectively. That doesn't mean that Prabhupada thought that women were always less intelligent, or that blacks were always inferior. But Prabhupada, for instance, in the Bhagavatam, it mentions things like that. So it's not Prabhupada speaking something which was outside of Shastra, but when taken out of context, it would appear that Prabhupada was criticizing a group of people. But then again, Prabhupada, in his exchanges with these devotees, was always engaged in loving exchanges with them, appropriately helping them become Krishna conscious. Prabhupada didn't discriminate between women and men and blacks and whites or anything, young or old. He equally tried to help everyone wake up to the relation with Krishna. But he didn't deny, on the other hand, that there are differences in bodies according to the modes of nature also. He wasn't an impersonalist, nor was he a materialist, thinking that everything is one. Oh, that's an impersonalist. Materialist, that we should try to enjoy the varieties. No, Prabhupada was simply expert at helping people according to time, place, and circumstance understand their relation with, at least begin to understand their relation with Krishna. Now, unless we accept that Prabhupada is the pure devotee, pure representative of Krishna, then our minds will, we have no, as Srila Vyasadeva, his mind was spinning around, he says, like a boat on the water is swept away by a strong wind. So even one of the roaming senses, which the mind becomes fixed, can carry away man's intelligence. So as soon as we become doubtful that Prabhupada's books are perfect, although I may not be perfectly be able to understand them, unless we have that inquisitive mind to understand their perfection, namely the perfection of leading us to the love of God, then we have no basis of authority. We have no basis of faith to develop our faith on. Now, the next point is, what about the representatives of Krishna, of Prabhupada? So we can have faith, and if we have faith in Prabhupada, then we can also have that kind of faith in Prabhupada's representatives too, according to our realization. In other words, the conditioned soul doesn't have absolute faith because he doesn't have absolute experience. But he has to have enough faith to follow the process if he wants to make progress. So we have to also have faith appropriately in the representatives of Krishna and Prabhupada, our acharyas, that they're also representatives. And that faith is derived from seeing if they're actually following what Prabhupada said, what Krishna says, not only talking about it, but also following it, that they're also living it. Then we can have faith that if I follow them, then I'm actually following Prabhupada and Krishna and our acharyas. This is called disciple succession. If we don't have faith in them, then we'll have faith in someone else. As a matter of fact, we're in this body now because of our faithfulness, because a whole variety of other people since time immemorial. As Prabhupada told Professor Kotatsky when he was in Moscow, that we can't agree on anything. As a matter of fact, Professor Kotatsky couldn't understand practically anything Prabhupada was saying. From we're not this body, to run ashram, that there should be an intelligent class of people in society. He rejected everything Prabhupada said. But Prabhupada finally got onto a point which he had to agree with. He said, actually, there's really no difference between your philosophy and our philosophy. Your philosophy is that you're going to follow Lenin as your authority. And we have the same philosophy. We're going to follow our authority, Krishna. Now, wherever Lenin goes, that's where you're going to go. And wherever Krishna goes, that's where we're going to go. That's just normal. If you follow someone's footsteps, then ultimately you'll wind up where they are. So we have millions of persons, billions or trillions of persons we've been following since time immemorial. And that has not got out of our brain because our subtle body has been carrying us from one body to the next, based upon whoever we accept as an authority. So we have to choose, we have to recognize who we actually accept as an authority. Sometimes I've seen or heard, even the devotees, they have earphones on and they're listening to music, and you think they're listening to some bhajan. But when they want to talk to you and they take the earphones off, you can hear the Beatles or the Rolling Stones. So it means we can't, somehow or another, it's difficult for us to not idolize certain personalities as superior to us, and they are superior in some ways, but not in a way which is going to bring us back to Krishna. We can respect them as being empowered by Krishna in a certain way, but we should not idolize them, because we don't want anyone we idolize, we're going to follow their, we become subtly influenced by them, and we imitate them in some way or another. Therefore, we should understand who's actually worthy of our respect, real respect and devotion, someone such as Srila Prabhupada, and also equally to the degree that anyone follows Srila Prabhupada or our acharyas in Krishna. So we need this association with superiors, but we also need association with equals. Because we need association with those who are not enamored with us, who are not taking us as some great personality, who can actually be honest with us and tell us truthfully something to help us advance in devotional service. That's someone we can actually feel equal to and not try to control them, but try to have a relationship of respect and service to them based upon the higher instructions we get from superiors. We also have to practice with equals. And there must be some devotees who we actually take and try to help those who are newer than us, less experienced, who accept us as their mentors and instructors. We should pour our energy into them also to try to help them. Otherwise, where do we learn compassion? Where do we learn friendship? Where do we learn servitorship from if we don't have these three different classes of devotees to serve and work with? It's all service, but there has to be some kind of variety. Otherwise, our development of devotional service and loving exchanges with the devotees will always remain incomplete. If we only idolize the devotee, one or two devotees, and we don't make friendship with the other devotees appropriately, we don't have in our lives someone could actually tell us the truth in an appropriate way to help us understand ourselves better, then most of the time we don't have the association of someone who's going to reveal our deficiencies and encourage our credit, our good qualities. And if we don't have someone to pour out the experiences we have in Krishna consciousness and see and help them, see how it helps them, then our experiences will not be properly utilized in Krishna service. The gifts that other devotees have given us, we have to also give them to other devotees, newer devotees. Otherwise, we'll be a miser, keeping the gifts all ourselves and not distributing it to the innocent or to others. So to develop love fully, we need these three different types of relationships, and that's done intelligently, systematically, whether in small groups or in our family or in the temple. Somehow or another has to be arranged that we have a full diet of Krishna consciousness, a full diet of loving exchanges with devotees. If we want to make spiritual advancement. So I'll stop there because I don't want to go too far over time. Thank you for your attention. Are there any questions? Comments?
Maharaj, how can one be more independent in life? Because in Kali Yuga we are bound to be not independent, but Bhagavad Gita recommends to be independent.
Could you tell me where in Bhagavad Gita it says we should be independent of what?
Yeah, I think there is a verse says devotee is always independent, but I don't remember now.
You should be independently strong to rely upon Krishna.
Yeah, on Krishna, but not on humans. That's what I'm.
Humans? No, we should be independently strong to rely upon Krishna, and Krishna includes his devotees too, his pure devotees and even his inspiring devotees. We have to take shelter of devotees appropriately, as it says in this verse. They should not be considered an ordinary human being. Charyamam vijanitam navamanyate karicha. One should not consider the other devotees just ordinary persons. That's offensive. We have to learn how to appropriately take shelter of them. Even Krishna takes shelter of his devotees sometimes, but to speak of ourselves. Yes, Agnihotra Guru.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Thank you so much for your lecture. Super lecture, thank you so much. Two questions in Zoom chat from in Russian. Matazalandavata, please translate this.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, pranams. So Lilavati Mataji is asking how to make a distinction between self-esteem and feeling proud.
Well, we can feel proud of Krishna. We can feel proud of Krishna's devotees. We can even be proud the fact that Krishna is using us as an instrument, how nicely he does, how nicely his spiritual energy works. We can feel proud of how nicely Krishna is distributing Krishna consciousness, using us as an instrument. So the difference is, one of them we're an illusion, thinking ourselves to be the independent doers, taking credit for our activities. The other is we see things in relation to Krishna and in relation to Krishna's representatives. So ourselves as spiritual beings, we're part and parcel of Krishna, so we love ourselves. But Krishna is the whole, and therefore we love Krishna. He contains within himself ourselves. So as we love ourselves, so we'll love Krishna even more, because we'll see ourselves in Krishna also. But we love ourselves, we'll also love Krishna, but even more because he's much more than we are. So we'll value ourselves because we're part and parcel of Krishna. Just like a piece of gold. We value the piece of gold because we understand the value of the gold mine. So the more we become Krishna conscious, the more we'll actually love ourselves, because we'll find out who we actually are. But when we're seeing things without Krishna, then it's very confusing because self-esteem and illusion is not very much esteem. If you thought you were Frankenstein and someone told you weren't Frankenstein, you felt bad about it, and you claim you lost your self-esteem as Frankenstein, your self-esteem as Frankenstein wasn't very valuable. What's valuable is your self-esteem as a spiritual being, servant of Krishna. That's where we should put our self-esteem in. And if in relation to this body can do so many things for Krishna. And therefore we value that also. We value also Krishna's body because it can be used in his service. We value things in relation to Krishna's, even our family members, because they're also can be engaged, they're also expansions of Krishna. So Krishna consciousness means we actually find the real value that we esteem, rather than false value that we foolishly esteem. My self-esteem can't be based on the fact that I can stand on one hand. What kind of that, when I get 90 years old, I'll be lucky if I still have a hand. But to speak of standing on it. So having self-esteem that I can stand on a hand is not very valuable. And if I want to have that self-esteem, at least I should acknowledge that it's not my hand. It's not the intelligence, my intelligence. It's all been the gift of Krishna that allows me to think I'm standing on one hand, but I'm not standing on anything. It's Krishna's energy that's standing on that one hand. I'm simply the same spirit soul, part and parcel of Krishna, transcendental to the material energy, desiring to have a body to stand on one hand. So at least I should see in relation to Krishna.
Maharaj, I beg of you, you do understand I'm trying to translate simultaneously. Could you please slow down a little bit? Okay, the second question from Krishna Chandra Das. Thank you so much for your lecture, dear Guru Maharaj. Please accept my humble obeisances. I have heard that when Srila Prabhupada was with us, all devotees called each other Prabhu and could do a full dandavat. At what moment and why did it become Prabhu and Mataji, and how should I address the senior devotee in the female body?
Well, I joined the movement in 1968, and I knew most of the devotees in the movement at that time. I never called Mataji Prabhu in 50 years. During that whole time, I never heard anyone call Mataji Prabhu. Actually, in the beginning, we were calling the Matajis gopis. And at that same time, we were all dressed, we all had this uttariya, all the brahmacharis had the uttariya because we were imitating Prabhupada. When we finally found out in a lecture by Prabhupada that we should call the ladies Mataji, actually. Prabhupada said that in a lecture. So we changed from Gopi to Mataji. But Prabhupada never gave anyone instruction to call the ladies Prabhu. Could you imagine a husband calling his wife? Anyhow, whatever else. Mataji, unfortunately, in the present culture, is not valued as it is in the Vedic culture, which we're trying to establish, civilized culture. The mothers are valued like Mother Jasoda. If you went to the spiritual world, would you call Mother Jasoda Prabhu? Or would you call her Mother Jasoda? No, I think most of us would have enough intelligence even now to call Mother Jasoda Mother Jasoda. She never asked that she be called Prabhu. Because mothers are valued on the same level as the Father. As a matter of fact, according to Nectar devotion, the topmost devotee of Krishna in paternal affection is Mother Yasoda, even higher than Nanda Maharaj. So her service to Krishna is valued more than Nanda Maharaj's on one level. So this artificial attempt to put ladies on the same level as men is impersonalism. Unfortunately, in modern society, neither women nor cows nor old people nor any are valued appropriately. Raising children in Krishna consciousness is not seen as a valuable service. As a matter of fact, it's the most valuable service. Otherwise, we simply have Varna Sankara, little animals running around, if they're not properly trained from the beginning. Kamara Acharo Pragyo, Dharman Bhagavataniha. Our topmost Mahajan, Prahlad Maharaj, advises from the very beginning of life, children should be trained in Krishna consciousness. Now, who's going to do it if it's not the ladies? Because it takes the whole community to raise a child, but the most intimate relationship a child has is with his mother. So that's the most valuable service for a lady, to raise a child from the beginning of his life in Krishna's service. So unfortunately, we've been misdirected by people who don't have our best interests. We're trying to destroy the family, trying to destroy the proper loving relationships between men and women that should be there, proper respect between them. And we've gone along with it. And it's now we have people in America with 72 different designations for their gender. They can't even agree that they're a man or a woman anymore. They're an it, a he, an it, she, or whatever. So people become mad, and we're following their footsteps and arguing, giving a title, whether it's Prabhu or Mataji, that Prabhu's "You're my master" is being much more important than being my mother. I mean, who would you rather live with, your master or your mother? I mean, I don't know, maybe mothers should have motherly affection. And Prabhu is masculine to discipline us and direct us. Both have to be there. We don't just want discipline, we want discipline for love and devotion and affection. That's what discipline is meant to train us. So if we don't have mothers, then we just have a disciplined father, then our life will be quite incomplete, not very devotional, not very loving. So we need both. We need Matajis and we need Prabhus. And we all need that. Anything else?
Good.
Yes.
There is another question in the chat. So, in English.
There is two questions. There is one in Russian and one in English. Should I read? Okay, I will read one in Russian from Lisa. Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances. This is a very difficult subject matter for me, and I appreciate that you have helped me understand. So my question, how do we have to feel Krishna? By our spiritual feelings? I am a little bit scared that it will be, that it's not going to be true. Please explain how to understand spiritual feelings, and that it's not just my mind playing tricks or my fantasy.
Oh, well, that's always a possibility. There's a class of people called Sahajis who imagine that Krishna has come before them dancing. But according to, one second, I just have to take this before. You can hold on for 1 minute. I'll be right back. Is that all right? I'll be back in 1 minute. Sorry about that. Yes, it's a most interesting topic, but it's dealt with quite extensively in Prabhupada's books, how we can understand from one level, from one point of view. Krishna says, Gyanena tutad agyanam yesham nashitam atmanaha tesham adityavad gyanam prakashiti tatram. One, however, one is enlightened with the knowledge by which nescience is destroyed, and his knowledge reveals everything, just like the sun lights up everything, like everything in the daytime. So in one sense, spiritual experience is self-illuminating. No one has to be told, who has eyes to see, that the sun has come up in the morning. If someone says, can you prove to me the sun has come up, and the sun's right there in the daytime, the proof is the fact that you're seeing the sun. It's right there. There's no other proof necessary. Still in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it says, Bhakti Pareshanu Vyaktir, Anyata Trika Ekakala, Aparamanasya Tashnatos Tushti Pushti Shrudapaya Nugasam. That if you eat a meal, no one has to give you a certificate that you ate the meal. The proof that you ate the meal is you have three experiences. Namely, you feel full or satisfied that you've eaten. The other is you get growing strain, and then you become detached from hunger. Similarly, by the properly executing bhakti yoga, then one is able to see things in relationship to Krishna more clearly. One is able to experience ever-growing affection and love for Krishna and for other living entities. And one is able to detach from oneself from the things that draw the mind away from Krishna. Generally, the first comes. All of them come simultaneously, but especially in the beginning, we're trying to take our minds away from things that take our minds away from Krishna. Now, if we have doubts what our experience is, we should consult with devotees who we have faith in, have a higher level of experience than we do, and consult with them whether this experience is valid or not. And judging from Guru, from Sadhu, and from Shastra, we can ascertain, is this experience only a product of my imagination, or is it actually an experience of Krishna? consciousness. Now, even those who are experiencing Krishna, that Krishna is coming, imagining Krishna is coming before him and dancing, that's not totally unreal because they're remembering Krishna. And that way they're also becoming purified. As long as they follow the principles of and not engage in sinful activity. But it's, to a certain extent, it's not really Krishna. Because Krishna is not going to reveal himself by simply our own, if we don't follow the process properly. The process is generally to accept everything belongs to Krishna, to hear from Krishna's authorities, how to utilize our energy in Krishna's service, and to do that activity with love to please Krishna. Then Krishna reveals himself or manifests himself in our memory. And then we learn how to experience his presence as we become more absorbed in that remembrance of Krishna. So that will take some experience and practice. And if we have some doubts, we should consult with those who have superior knowledge than we do, so we can stay clearly on the path of understanding how everything belongs to Krishna and utilizing our energies in Krishna's service and doing it to please Krishna, so that our actual revelation of Krishna becomes experienced in such a way as it becomes clear that it's actually Krishna revealing himself to us, helping us remember him, we could say. Now, for an example, one devotee was claiming that Krishna came in his dream and told him that he should become an acharya. And then another devotee said, well, I had a similar dream last night, and Krishna came to me and told me that actually he was going to come to you in his dream and tell you something. That this devotee was going to think that Krishna came to him in a dream and told him to become an acharya, but he was telling that devotee in the dream to tell him that that wasn't Krishna coming in the dream, that he was wrong. So that type of argument, that Krishna came to me and told me something, in itself is not substantial enough to guarantee that it was actually Krishna who came and told him anything. That's confirmed by Guru, Sadhana, and Shastra.
Maharaj, there is one more question. It's in English. Do you want me to read it to you?
Yeah, I read it to everyone.
Okay. Maybe you can read it. Do you see it in the chat or?
Hare Krishna, dear Guru Dev, thank you for the lecture. You mentioned that we should try to accept Srila Prabhupada's books as perfect and his representatives as well. But if his representatives' opinions on Srila Prabhupada's teachings are sometimes different. Some say Srila Prabhupada allowed eating chocolate, some say he didn't. Well, we don't necessarily have to accept that Prabhupada's representatives are perfect, because Prabhupada is perfect. They may be, we're not disallowed. But as far as Rupa Goswami says in general, in the Nectar devotion, there are 64 principles we're supposed to follow, but there are also details. So our acharyas, they all accept the principles, but sometimes they differ on the details. So the main details are always remember Krishna and never forget him. The main principle is to always remember Krishna and never forget him. And there are other 64, like accept spiritual master, take initiation, serve him faithfully, follow his teachings, etc. These are 64, of which 5 important ones, of course the first 10 are very important, but there are 5 powerful processes that are mentioned, such as chanting the holy name, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, worshiping the deities, serving the devotees, and living in a holy place, or preaching, making the place holy by preaching. So these are 5 powerful processes mentioned as primary principles, including accepting a spiritual master and taking initiation, etc. Now, whether you eat chocolate or not, well, that may be a personal decision. There may be other factors. Not all chocolate is the same, by the way. And we have instructions from Prahlad in different times and places. So if we're confident that this is actually a bona fide service to Krishna, that's one thing, but it's not a very big topic. At the time when the Vishnu Dutas come, or the Yamadutas come, and the Yamaduta is probably not going to say, you can't take him back to Godhead. We saw him eat chocolate one time. And the Vishnu Dutas say, so sorry, we'll see you next life. They go back to Vaikuntha. It's not a very important topic, really. Not something certainly we shouldn't argue about. But it's not necessarily that it's not. It may have some value if we actually think it's important. We may spend a little time discussing it or evaluating it, and just leave it alone. And if we see a devotee eating chocolate, we shouldn't make a big scene out of it. You're breaking the principles, you're sinful. I'm calling the Yamadutas right away. They'll be here in a few minutes to take you away. It's not a big thing. It's not something we should be so overly concerned about. At least not at this point. All right, thank you very much. Grandharaj Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Nectar Instruction.
Jai.
Jai.
Jai Ho.
Yeah.
Hare
Jai.
Gurudev. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Харе Кришна, Гуру Махарадж, спасибо
Харе
большое.
Кришна, Гуру Махарадж.
Кришна. Дорогие преданные, всем Харе Кришна.